All right, hello everybody and welcome to the stream. I am Razim and this is Kur Tales, where Kur is going to lore dump all over all of you. Right?
Wow. That is probably not the way I would have rephrased that. Not at all.
Well, then you can do your own intro.
No, you should do some work here.
Oh, well, I just did, and you're complaining about it.
Yes, and you deserve it, and you know it.
What?
You know exactly what you did, sir.
I simply introduced you.
Right, that's what you call it, yes.
Yes, that is what I call it.
Also, I had a question about this before we get fully started, and I just realized this could be something good. Are you able to share pictures on the stream?
Yes.
If there is artwork that would go well for showing something off, if I basically give you the pictures.
Technically, I mean, it would probably fall under fair use, so yes.
Yes, because I'm trying to educate people and teach them.
Yes.
But yes, feel free to introduce us, introduce what we're going to be doing and all that stuff.
I just did. You're lore dumping all over everybody.
That hurts. That hurts so much, I think I need a margin video.
Kur is going to be sharing all sorts of lore and information about various franchises and games and such. Starting off with World of Darkness.
I am running 2 games right now at the moment, so I figured that would be a good place to start. Where is my button that I'm looking for? Because I need to do something real quick before we get started. Where is the button? Did you take off the button?
We're already started.
Yes, I know. But you took off the button.
Which button?
Which makes me sad. I don't have the cannon anymore!
Yes, I turned off the cannon.
I wanted to fire the cannon.
I didn't want to. I didn't want them to interrupt you in your speech.
Fine, I just throw something then.
Fine.
Anyway, is there any rules or such for doing this? Figure I should ask.
You should have asked this before we got started. We're already recording.
That's not my problem. That's a your problem.
You're the one that didn't ask these questions ahead of time.
I know, but I have to tease you a little bit.
I have no idea what kind of rules there would be. Just do your lore dump.
You make it sound so boring, sir. You make it sound so freaking boring.
Right. Spin the web. Share with us the glorious stories and information about the world in an intriguing and entertaining fashion.
You may have just saved your life tomorrow.
Oh, great.
Anyway, okay. So. Greetings and bienvenue. Hello everyone, good to see everyone here. Feel free to speak up in chat. I am watching and following along with it. So feel free, post any comments, questions, thoughts, anything like that while I am going. And I will either try to get to it or I will bring it up when I get to a good area to mention it. But feel free to ask anything. One of the big issues that I have is I know basically everything. So for me, it makes perfect sense, and I might miss details that other people might not understand because I already know it so well. Which is one of the reasons I also have Zim here, because Zim can help me with that too. But
I
yes,
told him to give me an outline, but he's like, it's in my head. I'm like, but no, I want it here. Read it out.
A lot of these times I'm a bit free-flowing with this, so I do have a bit of an outline I'm going to be trying to follow, but one thing leads to another. Anyway, today's story, what we're going to be focusing on probably for the next couple of months, maybe, depending on how far we go, is going to be the World of Darkness. Today's focus is going to be on the world in general. So I figured this would be a very easy starting point for us. A good sort of overall dive into the world, so to speak. So first we have our opening question. What is the World of Darkness? For those of you who have never heard of the game, who have never heard of any of this, what is the World of Darkness? To put it simply, it's pretty easy to understand. The World of Darkness is our world. The World of Darkness has the same countries, same people, same corporations for the most part. Anything that you see here in your daily life, it's in the World of Darkness. However, the difference here is the World of Darkness, things are a little less well off. Yes, I know that can be astounding for some people, considering the state of 2022 right now. But yes, the world is a little worse off. Things are a little less bright, a little less good. People, well, they're darker than they would be in our world. Not necessarily their fault, though. Creatures prowl the World of Darkness. So many different kinds. You have vampires, werewolves, mages, changelings and fair folk, ghosts, demons, mummies, and dozen or two other just subsets of those types of creatures and more. We're going to be going into all of those as we go in. The World of Darkness is usually modern day. That can change though depending on who is running it though and where they want to set it at. But otherwise, for me, I'll go from my perspective, since I've been running this game for 10 plus years, and probably everyone here watching is probably going to be watching some of my games. I tend to use modern day for mine, and for us, I like to put focus on the different supernatural factions. Do you guys have any of the creatures jump out at you that you would like to hear a little bit more about before I just choose one? Vampires, werewolves, mages, changelings, mummies, ghosts, demons. Anything stand out? Anything you guys would want to hear about first? I can get the little Cliff Notes version for each one as I go.
I'd just go through all of them. Cliff notes. We can expand
I
on
know that.
them.
I just thought I would ask in case anyone wanted to hear something first. Then I could start with that one.
I mean, most of my viewers are furries, so, the werewolves are probably...
Werewolves will be last then.
Oh.
I gotta save the best for last, right? gotta keep people here.
Well, then why did you even offer to let them choose if you're just gonna yank it away?
I'm teasing, and you know it. I have to be a little bit entertaining. But if no one wants to speak up, no one has a big opinion on this one, we'll just go down the list, I guess. You have the vampires. There are two big groups of vampires in the World of Darkness. You have the Cainite vampires, which are what any of you might think of a vampire. That is them. I can get into that, Serial. I will get into that once I just give a little bit of this. Vampires, the Cainite vampires, they have the same weaknesses you can imagine. Sunlight incinerates them, fire terrifies them, stake through the heart won't kill them, but it will paralyze them. And chopping their head off is also a very good way to kill them. They are split into different clans, and they're like cats. They really don't like each other, but they kind of have to get along because they're all stuffed in the same world together. And the other kinds of vampires are the Kuei-jin. The Kuei-jin are the Chinese vampires. They feed on breath and basically the equivalent of a person's soul. When they are exposed to sunlight, they don't burn, they rot. Unlike normal vampires, they aren't embraced. They are not bitten by a vampire and then given some blood to be turned into one. Each and every Kuei-jin has to drag themselves out of hell and repossess their dead body to come back to life. And they hate Cainite vampires. The two despise each other with a fiery passion. The werewolves, once again, are split into what are called tribes. They are not the werewolves that most of the media that you might watch nowadays would tell you. They can control their shapeshifting. They can shapeshift basically at will. They have multiple different forms that they can choose to take, and silver does hurt them, though it is not required to actually kill them. They fight to protect the world, and one of their tribes, has fallen and basically turned twisted and evil and seeks the utter destruction and death of everything. They're called the Black Spiral Dancers. We'll get more on them when we actually get into the werewolf chapter. You have mages, people who have awoken to the fact reality can be changed, and they can alter reality with their will. However, doing so tends to lead to reality punching you in the face and then dragging you off to beat you down. You gotta be careful about doing it too much. Mages are split between two groups. They are called the traditions, who believe in magic. Each tradition has their own way of doing magic. You have the Verbena, for instance, who believe in like witchcraft and such, or versus, say, the Celestial Chorus, who believe in prayers and calling on God to perform miracles, aka magic. While on the other end of the spectrum, you have the technocracy, people who do not believe in magic, but believe in science. They're the ones who can construct giant laser weapons, Optimus Prime, the Millennium Falcon, and the USS Voyager. They have done those things before in universe too. But the two factions disagree on the way the world should go. The traditions believe that everyone should be allowed to express their own reality and have a chance to make their own reality, while the technocracy believe that reality needs to be made safe, that anything that can destabilize reality or the world must be dealt with in order to protect the world. Obviously, these two sides do not coexist with each other very well. You have the Changelings and the Fair Folk. The Fair Folk come from Arcadia. Arcadia, a great realm? Difficult to describe it in mortal terms. because it doesn't make sense. Arcadia is whatever it wants to be. That doesn't work for our minds because we live in a stable, unchanging world. That place is pure chaos. It is pure story. It is whatever the story demands it be. And the beings who reside in it, the gentry, the fair folk, the gods of Arcadia, they exist in a perpetual story as the main characters, constantly fighting it out among each other, either in great galas or on battlefields. And they're interested in us, in people, in humans, because they cannot create anything. They cannot make anything. They can only copy and mimic. And humanity is one of the few races in existence that can actually create something from nothing, from just an idea. And they are enticed by that. And so they steal away humans, bring them into their world and change them, twist them, in order to create even greater stories that they feed on. And those who make it back from Arcadia, back into our world, are forever changed. Part of them was lost, traveling between those worlds, and they become what are called changelings. Half human, half fair folk, you could say. And they are struggling to survive. Because you never know when your master might come calling again for you and drag you back into that glorious hell. You have the ghosts, the race as they call them, beings who exist in the underworld, who very rarely can come over into our world. People who died, who were bound to something, who had regrets, who were never able to, say, publish a manuscript, who were never able to accomplish their lifelong dream, who just don't want to leave their families. And those regrets tie them here, keeping them in the underworld. And within each and every wraith lurks another being, what is called the Shadow. And the Shadow seeks nothing less than the total usurpation of the wraith and to take them over. Every wraith is their own worst enemy. Every wraith constantly struggles and battles with a being who knows them, who wants nothing more than to drag them into oblivion itself, to unmake them and the entire world, both living and dead. And hey, you get to deal with that for the rest of your existence, because once you're a wraith, it's really hard to get out of it. So good luck, everyone! You have demons. They're a whole story. They just came back. They just came back to a world after being locked away for, pretty much the dawn of time. And they come to a world that's fallen, that's lost so much. All of its spark, all of its life, all of its creativity, and all that seems to be left are the embers of a world they once knew. And they are struggling because God is gone. And so are most of his angels. And they don't know what happened. Now, some of them are here to pick up the pieces, perhaps wanting to make a difference again. And some of them just want to watch the world burn. But hey, I'm sure everything will be fine, right? What's the worst that can happen? Any questions before I jump on a little bit? Because Serio asked a pretty good question, and I wanted to get to that.
Well, I don't have any questions so far, but I was thinking you could go over like how we got from explain a little bit about how, or maybe even a lot about how Exalted fits into the World of Darkness.
I was going to be going into that when I hit the history of the world, which was actually Serio's question.
All right. Carry on then.
All right. So to answer your question, Sirio, what is the history of the world and gods and stuff? So originally, way back to before prehistory. Also, hello, Octo. There existed another world, a world known as creation, a world of wonder, majesty, gods and heroes, and it was a glorious, glorious world. It was a place unlike anything any of us could really imagine nowadays. A place where gods walked among humanity, where great heroes larger than life fought against literal beings that could reshape reality with a thought. And for a time, things were good. The first age of the Wheel of Ages, of basically the history of the world of darkness. The first age was an age of such wonder and beauty that today it would be like paradise, pure paradise compared to today. And we had so much. Humanity could create wonders the likes of which we could never even dream of. Great flying cities, the ability to travel dimensions and worlds, control over life and death, where if someone died, rather than letting them leave to pass on and be reincarnated, you could just put them into a new body. It was a world of greatness, of heroes beyond imagining. There were issues, of course, problems. The great heroes of the day, the Exalted, began to go crazy due to a great curse that was put onto them. And an usurpation was launched against them. Many of the Exalted were killed. And with this event, the Wheel of Ages turned from the first age to the second age. It was an age of diminishment. There were still wonders, there was still majesty, there was still beauty to the world. But none of the wonders and glory from the first age. It just fell apart without the Exalted to maintain it. There were still some who survived, but they did not have the powers of the original heroes. Nowhere close to it. And they struggled. They struggled through the invasion of the fair folk to unmake reality. They struggled through a great contagion that killed 9 out of 10 beings. They struggled to maintain their own borders as factionalism and the petty beliefs that, oh, one family is better than another, took root. And they struggled to save the world. Eventually, things fell apart. The world began to die. The world began to be unmade and fall apart. But great heroes rose up in this time. And through their sacrifice and their efforts, they saved the reality. They saved the world. They saved its people. But they weren't able to save everything. They weren't able to save everyone. The world was nearly lost completely. A great wall between our world, the mortal world, so to speak, the world of flesh, was separated by a great wall called the Gauntlet. The Gauntlet separated the spirit world from our world. It separated spirits, gods, and basically the dead as well from our world. That was the beginning of the Third Age. The Third Age is where the World of Darkness's history begins. It is prehistory. It is the Garden of Eden. It is all the creation stories that you can think of. They happened. They exist. They are real. It just depends on which perspective you have. Because in the Third Age, reality doesn't exist like it does now. Reality existed on multiple levels. One thing, one simple object could exist as 8, 9, or 10 different things. And it's hard for us, so limited as we are, to imagine that. But, for example, an easy way to put it that we can understand is everyone knows the creation story. God said, "Let there be light," and boom, there was light. However, that's true in one case, in one plane of reality. But in another, the angels worked, bringing matter together, slowly causing the first Big Bang to happen. And from that came stars, planets, and everything science would tell you is the way it happened. Both are true. Both happened. But they happened on different layers of reality. And it's hard for us as humans to see that, because we only exist on one. But multiple races have creation stories. The vampires have their own story. The werewolves have their own. Changelings believe they know how things work. So on and so forth. Needless to say, regardless of which story you listen to and which story you believe, each story ends the same way. The world was shattered. The world was devastated. If you go by, say, the Garden of Eden story, we lost the garden. The change from the Third Age to the Fourth Age. The Fourth Age, modern man starts to come into being. You have the history, Mesopotamia, Babylon, ancient history basically. All that happens during the Fourth Age. And nowadays, today, modern day, so to speak, you have the Fifth Age. Our current age, which is near the worst it can possibly be. The world is dying. Every day, natural disasters hit. You have oil spills, wars. People just don't care. And it's slowly getting worse day by day by day. And no one's really doing much about it. That's where you come in. Your choices, what you decide to do, that's what determines the fate of the world. Can you stop the changing of the Fifth Age to the Sixth, which is hell on earth? The Sixth Age is an age of pure pain, suffering, and agony of which you would not believe. Where the First Age is an age of basically bliss, joy, and creation, the Sixth Age is an age of hell, destruction, death, suffering, pain, and probably a dozen other really, really nasty things. But, like any wheel, it continues turning. The Seventh Age, things get a little bit better. The Eighth Age, the Ninth Age, the 10th Age, the 11th Age, and then back to the 12th Age, when the cycle resets. and basically we get paradise on Earth again. Or so the stories go. But so the stories also say some of the beings who are out to basically drive hell on Earth want to stop the wheel. They want to stop everything. They want to lock reality into the Sixth Age for all eternity, where they rule and, well, you suffer. Are there gods and such in the world of darkness? Yes. Yes, there are. Within the world of darkness, God exists. But nowadays, modern days, he's not around anymore. No one knows where he is. No one knows where he went. No one knows where his angels are. They left. They went somewhere else. There are some angels, so the stories go, that are still working to try to maintain reality and keep things from going too bad. But the big G, he ain't in the house. But there are other gods around. Spirits, so to speak. They are beings such as Luna, Gaia, Helios, the sun god. Anything that you can think of, any object, any item, any place, planet, even cities, have gods. Some of them, like, say, the god of your car keys, might be so weak that they're basically asleep. But then you have, say, the god of the sun, Helios, who is a huge mover and shaker in the spirit world. It just basically falls within their dominion. They each have their duties, they each have their job that they carry about. When they don't do their jobs, that's when things start breaking down. That's when things start getting bad. When they get corrupted and fall, when they decide to not do their job anymore, reality suffers, and so can we. But otherwise, when it comes to that type of thing, gods the way mortals believe in them do exist because of mortal belief. Our will, our desire to make something, to give it a name, a history, creates those things in the spirit world and gives them power. Is it to say they did not exist before? They could have. They very well could have. But the forms that exist today are brought forth by human belief, human faith, and, well, basically us. That's not to say they aren't real. Oh, believe me, they are. You don't want to mess with them. You really, really don't want to mess with them. And that's not to say that faith itself does not have its own power. In the world of darkness, believing in something hard enough, true, honest belief and faith in something does give you power. It does have its own power, the likes of which no other supernatural creature can replicate. And in many cases, it is extremely dangerous to them. On the flip side, though, true faith, as it's called, rare in the extreme in the modern day. True faith, I mean, look around today. How many people are just paying lip service to, say, religion? How many people don't even believe in it? Who don't believe ghosts, vampires, spirits are real? They don't believe in any one thing. They just watch TV. They just try to live their lives. Same thing in the world of darkness. That type of belief, that type of faith is rare and coveted by some supernatural factions. But hey, that's what we're here to talk about. Any questions from anyone? And that includes you too, Zim. What are you confused about? Lucas? This is what I'm here for. I wish to dispel the confusion. I will admit, this is probably the hardest one because I'm being so broad and trying to do basically everything without going into super deep depth. Basically, just kind of give a little bit of a groundwork.
It's an overview kind of episode of everything
Mm-hmm.
instead of focusing on anything.
Yes. Which is why, one of the reasons why I wanted to open up questions from people. Oh, that's fair. That's fair. Right now, I'm talking about the World of Darkness. It is an RPG that I run 2 times a week for the channel. It is a very broad game. It has many games under its title: Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf, Mage, Wraith, Changeling. There's a lot of games under the World of Darkness title, and all these games take place in the same world with its own history. There's so much lore, story, info on all of this that we're basically here in this chapter just trying to give an overview of the world, of what it's like. Kind of explain things.
It is very interesting, Lucas. Basically, the World of Darkness, like Kur said earlier, it's the modern world. It's kind of like a alternate reality where werewolves, vampires, etc. exist. Hey there, Trano. Good to see you. And hello there, Octo, as well. I did see you pop in. I was just letting Kurt go, you know. But yeah, there's a lot of lore to the world, and since we do run a couple of games of it, it would be helpful to the players of those games, as well as just interesting for all of you to experience and enjoy.
I have the bit of an issue of when I get interested in something, I don't stop until I know literally basically everything about it. I have been running World of Darkness games for 10 plus years now. I pretty much have memorized all of the major lore of the World of Darkness. All the big events, all the major storylines, so to speak, of big things that happen in the World of Darkness. And hey, this is a broad overview. I can actually give you guys a couple of stories if you guys would like. Some of the really, really big shit shows that went on in the World of Darkness that, well, they don't have a modern day equivalent. And they would be good little explanations for some things. Alright, so let's see. Let's start with something that would be really fun. At least to me, is really fun. Let's talk about the Week of Nightmares. The Week of Nightmares is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, event in World of Darkness history. If you have to pick any one moment other than like the end of the world itself, the apocalypse, it's the Week of Nightmares. It happened in 1999. And what happened was this. In 1999, a mage, a technocrat known as Xerxes Jones is his name, he got the idea of down in the underworld, there is a great pit, a great hole that absorbs and unmakes anything that falls into it. It is called the Mouth of Oblivion. It is oblivion itself. It unmakes anything and everything that falls into it. And he got the idea of, hey, let's try to close this hole. Let's see if I can do it. And what would happen if I tried? So he was going to run an experiment. He took the literal spirit relic of the bombs that were dropped. I believe it was Little Boy that he used. One of the bombs that was dropped on, it was either Hiroshima or Nagasaki. I'd have to double check which one. But he took literally the spirit of that bomb, and he took it to the Mouth of Oblivion, and he was going to detonate it there. Okay, no big deal, right? It's Oblivion. It's going to unmake anything. It shouldn't have that big of an effect, right? Even with this basically spirit nuke, what's the worst that can happen? Normally, that would be true, and nothing really would have come about this. Might have caused a little bit of issue in the underworld, maybe riled some ghosts up, pissed them off. I mean, nothing big. However, at the same time he was doing this, other things happened. One of the vampire clans, known as the Rabnos, what is called an antediluvian, woke up. What an antediluvian is a third generation vampire. They are basically, other than the vampire progenitor, who is Cain himself, they are the oldest and most powerful vampires. They are basically vampire demigods. They are terrifying. They are basically gods in mortal flesh. They are vampire gods, is the easiest way to put them. And they are terrifying. The Ravnos have the special ability as a clan to affect perception, the mind, and create illusions. When the Ravnos antediluvian woke up from his torpor, his great slumber, he drove every Ravnos utterly insane and set them on each other to eat each other. Anyone who had a lick of psychic ability basically had horrific nightmares when he woke up. They sensed him waking up. And this was over in Bangladesh or India, I want to say, if I remember correctly. I believe it was India, I want to say. Either India or Bangladesh. Yeah, it's somewhere around there. But when he woke up, he basically went on a feeding spree. Any of his vampires from his clan that were nearby, he basically sought out, ate them, and then kept going. And he did not stop. It took 3 of the most powerful Kuei-jin vampires, the Chinese vampires. They're called Bodhisattvas. They're basically the equivalent of an antediluvian. It took 3 of them fighting him for a week to slow him down. They fought non-stop, 24/7. You might ask, how did they do this during the day? The 3 Bodhisattva vampires conjured a tsunami to block out the sun while they fought. They fought this vampire. They couldn't kill it, but they slowed him down. And it was a truly epic battle. This is probably one of the greatest battles that has ever been fought in the World of Darkness' history, and it was fucking glorious. But even then, they couldn't put him down. He was that powerful. What ended up happening is, if you remember from who I talked about, the technocracy, the tech mages, so to speak, for those of you just joining us, they were watching all of this. They take it as their job to police reality, to keep things safe, to protect the common people from the supernatural. They want to make reality safe and understandable for everybody. And oh, holy shit, what the hell is going on over there? So, normally, the vampires are very good at policing themselves. They do not want anyone to know about them. So usually the technocracy, the tech mages, ignore them, live and let live, so to speak. This was not live and let live. This was worst case scenario going on right now. If any of you follow any of like the SCP Foundation, the technocracy is the SCP Foundation, and they're looking at an XK class end of the world scenario right now. What they do to try to combat this, to deal with this situation, is they have satellites in orbit. They begin to use those satellites to direct the sunlight through the cloud cover and basically turn those satellites into a sunlight laser to direct onto the antediluvian and the Bodhisattva vampires to try to vaporize them. This did not work. So finally, along with that, they also use a couple of tactical nukes. Small yield, but that combined with the sunlight lasers, plus the Bodhisattvas basically sacrificing themselves to take this thing down, was enough to kill the Ravnos Antediluvian. Finally. It took almost a full week, and dear God, they had a shit show to clean up. You know? It would be okay, though. It would be okay. They could deal with this. They could fix this. They had planned for this. What's the worst that can happen? So, the Ravnos Antediluvian died at the exact same moment Xerxes Jones detonated the bomb at the Mouth of Oblivion. Either one of these events happening alone would not be that big of a deal. Both of these events happening simultaneously at the same time caused such a spiritual and psychic backlash. It caused a massive, massive storm to develop. What those in the underworld call a maelstrom. A horrifically terrifying spiritual storm that would shred anyone in the underworld. Xerxes Jones was killed pretty much instantly by this, along with his nuke. And it devastated the underworld, absolutely devastated it. The wall between our world and the spirit world got even thicker. What was once called the gauntlet is now called the storm wall. It is almost impossible to get through. For mages, any mage who was over in the spirit world at the time that this happened had their souls ripped up, torn apart, and shredded. And now those pieces of their broken souls now flow in the storm's winds. And anytime any mage tries to go to the spirit world, those shards try to basically stab into your soul to put themselves back together, doing horrific damage. It's called the Avatar Storm for them. The only faction that really made it out without being truly affected were the vampires. Who really didn't, honestly. They don't have much in the spirit world, but in vampire society at this point, most of them said that the antediluvians didn't exist. They weren't real. They're just a story that we tell younger vampires to keep them in line. Oh shit, one of them just fucking woke up and drove an entire clan to basically murder each other and everyone around them. It was a really, really bad day for them. Really bad day for them. And since then, since that day, the Week of Nightmares, demons have begun to appear. Mages are still struggling because the most powerful mages lived in the spirit world, and now all the leaders are gone on both sides. The underworld is basically devastated and gone at this point. And now, to top it all off, now there are humans, normal humans that everyone could just kind of write off, who are gaining some sort of supernatural power, who can see them, who can know that they are not human, who know they are supernatural creatures, and they are hunting them and killing them. Yeah, I think things pretty much can't get any worse from this point. Spoiler. Yes, they can. But yeah, that's the Week of Nightmares for you. That's just one event in the World of Darkness history. It's one of the biggest known ones, though, because outside of like in-game lore, this is the event that started the Hunter the Reckoning book line and the Demon the Fallen book line, which allows you to play as hunters. Think Supernatural, if you've seen the show. It's Sam and Dean with a few special tricks, basically. Think of them more later season Sam and Dean rather than early season Sam and Dean. Like season 1 through season 3, Supernatural is basically original Hunter before the Week of Nightmares. Everything else, you're starting to get into actual Hunter book. And then Demon, well, I don't know if I really need to explain them. They're kind of self-explanatory. Fallen Angels. They came back, and oh shit, what the hell is happening in reality? Why is it falling apart?
I'm glad you specified, because a lot of different lore actually, like some lore, demons are corrupted humans. Some lore, they're fallen angels. It's not really standard across any of them.
So there's a lot of creatures that can say they're demons. You have Bane spirits, who are basically demonic spirits who have been twisted from their original purpose. They could be animal spirits, spirits of objects, spirits of items who have been twisted and corrupted. You have demons, who are beings who basically just like to cause pain and agony. But then you also have the fallen. That's usually the term they prefer. Whenever anyone's talking about, like, say, an actual, like, demon, capital D demon, like the fallen angels, usually they use the term the fallen for them. That's the term they prefer. But yes, any questions so far after that little bit?
I don't really have any questions myself so far.
Every group has their own stories. Every group has their own beliefs. Their own events that happen. The Week of Nightmares is one of the events that kind of crosses the streams and affects everybody. It was basically one of the biggest, like I said before, it's one of the biggest events that occurred in the world. Some of the other stories I can tell is, let's see, depends on which faction we kind of want to go with. For the wraiths, for the dead, basically, you have what are called the Great Maelstroms. The Week of Nightmares started the 6th Great Maelstrom, the final Great Maelstrom before the end of the world. But there were 5 others beforehand. The 5th Great Maelstrom happened during World War II. The first Great Maelstrom happened when Cain killed Abel. So you have some big time stretches between when one great Maelstrom happens versus the next. But the 6th, the one that started the week, or the one that ended the Week of Nightmares, is the worst. It was the most powerful, and it did the most damage. but each one of those is an event where the underworld was fighting for its life. You have, let's see, what's a good story here? Ooh, I know. I've kind of mentioned this story to some of our games. Does everyone here know of the story of the lost town of Roanoke by chance?
I do know the real world story, roughly, yes. But go ahead
Okay,
and get into it.
so for our world, the lost village of Roanoke, well, technically it was a colony. It was back in the, I think it was like 1580s, 1590s, around that time period, somewhere between there. Everyone in the colony went missing, just vanished. No one knows what happened to them. No one knows where they went. No one knows anything about what happened to that place. But it's one of the great little stories of what happened at the lost colony of Roanoke. In the
um,
world of darkness, yes,
I do want to specify this is something that happened in real life.
yes,
The Roanoke colony, it was 1580s, yes. It was in the region that is now modern day North Carolina here in the United States. And even to this day, we have no idea what happened to that colony.
hmm
Everything was fine, everything was good, and then suddenly everybody disappeared.
yep.
They went back to the colony to deliver supplies or something, and the only thing that they found was the word Croatoan. I'll write that in the chat. First off, here's the name of the colony. And then they had that word, which I've got the wiki page up here. They found that word carved into the palisade. But yeah, one of those mysteries of the world that we still don't have an explanation for. But carry on, Kur.
So, fun fact here, the Croatoan name there is the name of one of the werewolf tribes. When in the world of darkness, when the Roanoke colony vanished, what actually happened in the world of darkness's timeline is the werewolves fight against a being known as the Worm, Wyrm. It is an aspect of reality, basically, that has gone insane. And it seeks the utter destruction and end of everything. If you could describe it, it would be a great hydra. One of its heads, known as the Eater of Souls, the head dedicated to corruption and the spiritual defilement of all things. At Roanoke, the corruption there, along with the corruption from all the colonizers coming over, and tainted as they were, basically started off a ritual that would have allowed this being, this head of the worm, the Eater of Souls, to enter into our reality. And had such a being done so, it would have been the end of all reality itself. That's how bad it would have been. The Croatoan werewolf tribe knew this was coming, and began a great ritual to prevent it, to stop it. As one, as the Eater of Souls began to come through into our reality, they all threw themselves into the worm's maw. Them, their allies, their kinfolk, their friends, as well as the souls of every Croatoan who had ever died, cast themselves into this being's maw. They did so much damage to it that even today it hasn't fully healed. But they drove it back. They pushed it back out of reality and closed the rift, but not a single one of them survived it. No one really knows how they did it. What they pulled off should have been impossible, so the stories go. But every living being on Roanoke was gone, was wiped out by this event. The werewolves know about it. They know the actual cause, but I mean, that's just crazy, right? Werewolves aren't real, so it's just a mystery to most people. But yeah, it's probably one of the greatest acts of sacrifice the werewolves have ever made for the world. It cost them an entire, basically, tribe, a type of werewolf, is, I guess, how you can kind of consider them. They're almost like families. A tribe is a very, very large group of werewolves who all follow the same beliefs, code, and they all have the same spirit guide, so to speak. You don't get to be in a tribe unless that spirit accepts you as one of them. The Croatoan's spirit was Turtle, and Turtle was so devastated by losing his tribe that he has fallen into a sleep that he has yet to wake from.
Which, if I recall, is why there can't be any more Croatoans until he wakes up.
Correct. The same applies to for the werewolves. There is one fallen tribe known as the Black Spiral Dancers. They are a tribe who were corrupted and twisted by the worm, and basically fell to his service, and now work to basically unmake and kill reality and the world. Their tribe totem used to be Lion, but when they fell, Lion also fell from grace, though he did not completely fall to the worm. But he is so diminished, he is so lesser, that another spirit, a spirit of another tribe, took him under his wing. Literally, Griffin is the spirit's name. And now Lion serves him. And without Lion, no new White Howlers. The former Black Spiral Dancers used to be called the White Howlers. No new White Howler can be born. Because even if they're a werewolf, they're not a White Howler. Because they don't have his backing. Werewolves are extremely spiritual because they are beings of spirit. Their duty is to protect our world and the spirit world, to ensure that everything functions the way it's supposed to, and to wipe out anything that threatens the world. One of the ironies for the world of darkness in general, across basically every game, is you have these issues. You have the vampires with their clans. You have the werewolves with their tribes. The mages with their different groups. You have the technocracy and the traditions. And even the traditions and the technocracy within their own groups don't get along. If any one of those groups could get along with each other, could put aside their differences and actually work together, the werewolves, for instance, could wipe out the worm, no problem. They have the manpower, they have the ability, they have the skills. If they could provide a united front against the worm, they could wipe out all of its minions, all of its corruption. They could save the world and win. But they can't. They can't put aside their bickering, their squabbling, their fighting. They can't get along with each other. And because of that, they're going to lose if things don't change. Bit by bit, maybe it's inch by inch, but they will lose the war eventually. It's kind of sad in some ways, just kind of seeing that. All these great groups with all their power, all their abilities, all their knowledge, they can't really do anything about it. Anyway, any questions from anyone? Figure I can open up a little bit to Q&A too. We've gone into so much so far. And while we wait to Martin video. Boop.
Duke.
I figure I run a Martin video while I was waiting for questions and such.
Yeah, I'm all for that.
That's Zim.
Yeah,
My bad,
that was a
Octo.
reply to me.
Yeah, I just realized that. That is a very cute Martin.
Well, yeah, it's a Martin.
Do you have any questions too, Zim?
Nothing so far.
Come on, man, give me something here.
You're doing a
I'm
good
sure you
job
have some
explaining
questions.
Things.
But is there any questions that you have? I know you've been confused about stuff too, so I figured I can ask.
Nothing comes to mind.
Okay. Okay. So, I got something. So, one question people might have, or maybe not really a question, but a thought in the back of your mind, could be this. How the hell doesn't anyone freaking notice this?
That is a good thing to answer, yes.
I mean...
You have told me that before. Told me this before, but yeah, that is a great thing to mention.
This is our world, basically. We have smartphones. We have cameras on every street. We have literally so much information right now. How the hell doesn't the humans find out about this kind of shit? And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, most of the races tend to be very subtle. They tend to be pretty quiet, so to speak. A vampire will always try to lure someone away from a group before they try to feed, or use their supernatural powers. If they do use their supernatural abilities, usually no one's going to survive the event if they're going to see it, or remember it. Werewolves, when you see their 9-foot-tall snarling death beast, they basically create a mental reaction in your head that causes you to kind of write it off. When you get away from them, if you get away from them, it's like, oh no. Oh no, no. That wasn't actually a werewolf. That was just a big hairy guy coming at me. Or a really big dog. Same thing with basically every other faction. They are quiet, they are subtle, and usually they have a little bit of an ability to make people either forget or write it off. Also, it helps that there's the technocracy that exists, who basically, one faction of the technocracy's whole purpose is to ensure no one else finds out about the supernatural. They police themselves. If anyone's causing issues, anyone's causing trouble, anyone's being too loud, they get dealt with, usually in a very permanent fashion. Sirio has a question here. You said the werewolves could win against the worm and save the world. What about the other problems from the other supernaturals? Isn't there more than one threat? Yes, there are. Yes, there are, Sirio. For the vampires, you have the antediluvians, who we talked about in the Week of Nightmares. The werewolves dealing with the worm. The Wraiths were dealing with the sixth great Maelstrom and the darker spirits that came from that. Each faction does have their own threats, their own enemies. Technically, within Mage, the technocracy can be considered one, depending on which side you're on. Yes, they do. There's actually a group in the technocracy who are called the Men in Black. Yes, they specialize in mind magic, and yes, they do use the MIB memory wipe thingies as their focus for that magic, because the technocracy does not believe in magic. They use technology, which is magic. It's just their way of explaining it and doing it, but it's all of them. Each group has their own threats, their own issues, their own problems. They could deal with it if they could work together. The demons deal with a threat called the Earthbound, who are basically Lucifer's 6 generals were summoned to Earth way back when, during the Third Age, I believe it was. Yes, Third Age. And basically, they kind of ran things from behind the scenes. Greece, Rome was their big project back in the day. But they basically want to enslave humanity and rip out their souls and turn them into automatons to serve them. The demons struggle against them. You either serve them or you basically die. If the demons could work together under one banner, rather than being so split up among each other as they are, they could probably fight against them. They could oppose them. Once again, they can't do it. The Changelings could deal with the Fairfolk. They could come together as a united front against them. But they don't trust each other. They don't know who could be a loyalist, a privateer as they call them, who serve the gentries to capture Changelings and drag them back to Arcadia in order to basically make it so they aren't taken back. That's one of the big issues with the World of Darkness, is these threats could be managed, these threats could be taken care of if they had the ability to work together. But pride, ego, politics, belief, all those just get in the way of things. And because of that, that's why the apocalypse is coming closer and closer day by day, while the world gets worse day on, day on. A little darker, a little bleaker. It's not necessarily their fault, though. Like, I give them all this shit for not working together, for not coming together, but at the same time, they're dealing with centuries upon centuries of grudges, of losses, of sometimes victories. It's complicated for them. It's not simple. Like, we as the public, reading the books and following the history and such, just go, it's like, well, why don't you do this? It's like, look at our world. Why can't our countries work together? Why can't we do things? Because people are people. And on average, people tend to be idiots. Oh, Octo! I was planning to go into depth on that for the werewolves, but I can give a Cliff Notes version for the War of Rage. Yeah. That's a good little segue here, because this actually runs into that. So,
Before you get into that,
yes.
I know that there is a difference in the lore between Old World of Darkness and New World of Darkness.
Yes.
Should we specify like which one is which, or do these all apply to both?
Some events happen in Old World. I particularly focus on Old World, though I use New World a little bit for my stuff.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify for anybody coming in later that might be like, yo, what about old or new and such?
Yeah, no, when you get into New World of Darkness, or Chronicles of Darkness, I mean, technically, I think is the name now. It's basically its own history. It has its own timeline and such.
Okay.
But it also has its own different factions that are different from Old World.
Okay, fair enough.
To go into your question, Octo, the War of Rage. Oh boy. That's an anthill and a half. So, what we are going to go more into topic, or more into depth on this topic when we get into the werewolves. But I can give some Cliff Notes versions of this. The War of Rage was basically the world war for the werewolves. It is probably one of the darkest moments in history for them. And it is something that it's really, really hard to describe. The War of Rage was a war between the Gru, the werewolves, and all the other shapeshifters. You have like the were-rats, the were-alligators, the were-sharks, the were-spiders, the were-cats, and so on and so forth. The Farah believed that they each had a purpose in serving Gaia, that they had a role in serving the world. The werewolves believed that they were the main protectors, and everyone else had to basically bow to them, serve them, and basically go, well, we're right, you guys are under us. The other Farah did not take well to this, and basically said, fuck off. We're going to do our thing, you can do your thing, but you ain't bigger than us, you ain't greater than us. The werewolves took exception to this. And the Black Spirals saw a chance to foment dissent and basically set up, basically turning the werewolves on all of the other Farah, basically seeding rumors, using dark gifts to take the forms of these other shapeshifters. They did a whole hell of a lot of things to basically turn the werewolves against the Farah, the other shapeshifters. And the Guru were good at what they did, and they began to slaughter them wholesale. Some of the groups that they wiped out were the werebats of South America, and when the last werebat fell and died, their patron spirit Bat fell to the worm. The bunyips of Brain, work with me, please.
Australia.
Thank you. The Bunions of Australia, which are basically Thyselines, Tasmanian devils. Were Tasmanian devils. You can basically think of them as. Were utterly wiped out and exterminated by the Guru. And the Werecats were seriously hurt. Many of the Werecat tribes are still trying to recover from that. The Wererats were nearly driven to extinction. The Weregators were nearly wiped out. The Weresharks basically told the Guru to fuck off. You come into the water, we're gonna eat you. But basically, across the world, the War of Rage are basically devastating to every group. The only groups that were not really affected by this were the Kitsune, who very rarely went out of Asia, and they were not targeted because, well, they're very difficult to find, and they didn't really get involved in anything. And the Koroks, the Were Ravens. The Koroks were targeted, but they kind of forgave the Guru for that. They kind of understood what happened, that they were kind of manipulated and turned on each other by the Black Spiral Dancers. Nowadays, things never have really recovered from that since that day. All of the other Farah basically hate the Guru. It's not out and out warfare, but there is no unity. There is no teamwork. There is no working together. The Guru basically said they were going to rule all of the shapeshifters, and the shapeshifters basically said fuck off, and they fought to the death for it. And now, today, pretty much the only one who still kind of follows that job on land are the Guru, and it's too much for them. They can't handle everything by themselves. There's a lot more to that, but those are sort of the biggest things. The most recent event that kind of plays into the War of Rage, though it's not part of it, it happens afterwards, is the 1984 Hyena Court Massacre, which is the Ajaba, who are the Were Hyenas. Basically, they did not bow to the Simbas, the Were Lions, and their king, who is called Blacktooth. Blacktooth got pissed at that, so he called together a rally, and he basically led hundreds of people and basically wiped out most of the Ajaba, the Were Hyenas. It was an absolute massacre that nearly utterly destroyed them, and they're still trying to recover from that. They're in hiding, they're struggling, and the Were Lions just basically, they don't give a shit about taking care of the world. They're more caring about getting power and cementing their rule. Any questions?
Duke.
But yes, also a little bit, Sirio asks, you can't go back from the 5th age to the 4th, you can only go forward. Basically, yes. That's the way many of them see it. It's a cycle that will continue on. The only thing you can do is delay it.
I just don't know what to ask here.
Anything. Just ask the first thing that comes to your mind.
Nothing's coming to mind to ask.
Oh, I got something. I'm going to share this with you, Zim, so you can share it.
Alright, share it on Discord.
Oh, I sent it to you on Telegram. I'm sorry.
Send it on Discord, please.
Boop, 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 boop. There we go. Figure I can get a picture in here while we're hanging out and see if anyone has any questions. Pretty much, Sirio, or at least that's what people say. That's not necessarily true, though. This is just their belief that eventually things will go bad. Because, well, everything they have says it's going to go bad. But it's possible to save the world. It is. As an example, my games are a running series, even if it's completely different players, even if it's completely different group, different game. Each of my games are connected to each other and affect each other. I've been running for 10 plus years now, and each time my players have helped delay the end of the world. They have stopped the world from ending. They have averted the apocalypse somehow.
And now you're getting into this group where Toshime is very much trying to bring about the end of the world.
Everything is fine. This picture here on the screen, I thought it might be fun to have a little bit of artwork. This is from the War of Rage. The Werebats versus the Guru. I believe this is 11th or 12th century. No. This would be around 13th or 14th century. I take that back. 13th or 14th century here. The Werebats lost and were wiped out, but they did not go gently into that night. They fought like frickin' hell. Let me get another picture for us too. There's a couple of pictures for the War of Rage. Kind of give you guys an image of the sorts of things that you could expect here. When it comes to World of Darkness, when it comes to the world in general, a lot of the times the people are just without hope. They don't see the world ever getting better, especially when you have these darker groups working to basically make people not care, to basically close their eyes to it. Why care about the world that you live in when, hey, you're struggling to make rent, hey, you're struggling to make get food on the table, you're working a soul-destroying job that makes you just want to curl up and cry? Why would you want to care about any of that stuff when you could be sitting on your couch watching Netflix and just pretending like you don't exist for a while? I mean, that's not even going without. That's not even bringing in the supernatural corruption and effects that some of these groups use against normal people. And here, like I said, I mentioned the weresharks. Get out of the water or we eat you. Lo and behold, they still fought. I don't think this probably ended too well for the werewolves, though, honestly. You don't want to fight a wereshark in the water. It ends very badly. No, out of all of the groups, honestly, the ones who probably have it the best off are probably either the mages or the werewolves. Because honestly, they are the only group that really belongs, so to speak, in the world. Vampires are an abomination that shouldn't exist. Ghosts should not technically exist. Changelings are created and corrupted from humans. Werewolves are natural. They are meant to exist. They are meant to be the defenders of the world. Mages are meant to exist. They are meant to be what humanity can become. To be that basically beacon, so to speak, of what humanity could be if it woke up and it grabbed onto what its destiny is. Also, hello Toshime, welcome, welcome.
Well, hello there, Toshime.
It's a rough world. I mean, I want you guys, each and every one of you, to think for a second. Think about your life right now. Think about what you do day in, day out, all the issues you have, all the problems you deal with, all the numerous things that you are probably struggling with right now in your life. And now I want you to imagine that, hey, suddenly you found out that you're supposed to try to help save the world from some great evil, or you just learned that monsters exist. Vampires are real, ghosts are real, creatures that probably from your deepest, darkest nightmares are real. How are you going to take that? How would you take that in real life if that happened to you? It's not something that's easy. That's one of the things that World of Darkness can really hit on too. It depends on how much I want to put into my game. Some games I put more into it depending on the players I have. But one of the big focuses for the game can be you living this double life. Like, what do you do if you're now a vampire? But hey, you have a mom and a dad, a brother. What are you supposed to tell them? Why don't you come around during the day anymore? Why are you always so busy? What is this group you're always hanging out with? Like, imagine the struggle someone might have to go through with that. It's not something I would probably wish on my worst enemy, honestly. That would probably devastate your worldview. It would devastate your life. Everything that you kind of hoped to do, everything that you thought you would be able to do, it's a thing of the past now. And you just learned how unsafe your world is. Welcome to the world of darkness. I hope you can survive, because guess what, kitty? You're on your own. But yeah, let's open it up real quick to Q&A now, because we've hit pretty much all the big little sections. I figure now could be a question and answer time before we call it for today. Any questions about anything, no matter how small, how insignificant?
I was figuring you could expand a little bit on how somebody becomes a hunter.
How someone becomes a hunter? Okay. When it comes to a hunter, hunters are unique. They do not register as supernatural most of the time. Every hunter comes into contact with the supernatural at some point when they become a hunter. Say you are walking down a street and you cut through an alley in order to get to work. Or, you're trying to get home faster. And as you're walking down this alleyway, the man who's leaning against the wall, as you're trying to pass by him, suddenly changes. Suddenly, instead of seeing a normal person, maybe pale and, well, not super well off, suddenly he looks like a rotting corpse. And in your head, you hear the words, "It does not breathe." This is known as the imbuing, when a hunter is chosen. And the hunter here has to make a choice. How do they respond? What do they do? And it is these actions that determine what becomes of the hunter, what powers they get, what abilities they can use and call upon. Some hunters might go straight for the head. They might try to attack. Another hunter might try to put themselves between themselves and anyone else around to make sure the monster can't get to them. Another person might be willing to sacrifice their life to make sure that these things can't get to anyone else. Another might decide to, blow the whole shit to Kingdom Come if they have to. While another could decide not to do anything then, because you can see that there are some people who are walking by they might notice, but they make a note of where this thing is and where it might go, and then plan to come after it when the situation favors it once they can get a weapon and such. All of those people would become a hunter. Every hunter is defined by choosing to take action against the supernatural. A hunter that doesn't do anything, a hunter that recoils from the supernatural, that tries to say it doesn't exist, who try to ignore it and their calling, well, suddenly everything seems back to normal, but they know what they saw. They know it's real, that it exists, and now they are helpless to do anything about it. Those people are called bystanders. People who are aware of the fight, but can't do anything about it because they failed. And that's pretty much how the imbuing works. They don't really get anything else from that, except maybe a couple of little special powers, minor tricks, the ability to resist supernatural mental effects and to see through illusions, and the ability to hide from them. Otherwise, that's all you get, kid. Good luck hunting the supernatural creatures, while also trying to live your own life. Oh, by the way, your boss is a undead monster, so good luck dealing with that.
So yeah, most people when they see it, they don't. They just kind of don't do anything. But then those that choose to act, they become a hunter.
Yes, and they get a few supernatural tricks, like I said. Minor things compared to, like, say, werewolf, a mage, very minor compared to that. Again, you're looking at, say, Sam and Dean in the later seasons of Supernatural.
Minor, but also very powerful in their own right.
I mean, if you're facing the situation where that type of thing is useful, yes. But they're going to be much, much more restricted in what they can do and such, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And we'll get
It
into
is nowhere...
more.
Yes. It is nowhere near close to the utility of some of the other abilities that other supernatural creatures get. But yes. Any
But
other
at
questions?
the same time, hunters are the only ones that can see through any disguise attempt and such, right?
Correct. Yes. Hunters possess what is called the sight that they can bring up and call on. When they do, their hunter sight allows them to see through any guise or illusions that a creature might have. They might not necessarily get the clearest picture, like, say, you look at a vampire. A hunter might see the person's fangs are horribly distended and dripping blood, and their skin is pale and pulled back against the bone as though they are a corpse. While there is a hunter gift known as Discernment. Discernment basically allows them to see and know what a creature is through any type of illusion, special ability, anything cannot hide from Discernment, and they will know what that creature is, no matter what. They won't just have like a couple of clues or hints. They will full on see it for what it truly is. You can't hide from that. That is probably the hunter's greatest gift and ability, and when their sight is called on, they are also immune to any possession, any mental control, any type of basically mind affecting or anything that would affect their will or sense of self is either negated completely if it's already trying to affect them, or it just doesn't work on them. Their abilities are invisible to anyone who isn't a hunter. So one of their abilities that they can learn is basically that as long as they are holding a melee weapon, any kind of melee weapon. There's a story of a 12-year-old hunter boy who has a bat, and he can run the bat along a surface and it's going to catch fire. No one will see the fire. No one will be able to notice the fire. But when they swing the bat at the vampire, oh boy, if that bat hits, it's going to do really, really bad things to that vampire. It's specifically designed to work against supernatural creatures. But supernatural creatures, unless they use a detection ability, will not be able to see it or notice it being used. They have a few more tricks that they can call on and use, but again, mostly pretty minor in the grand scheme of things compared to the things they're hunting. When it comes to being a hunter, you plan, plan, plan. Location, location, location. You don't go after a werewolf without trying to lure it into a trap and then snipe it from a mile away with a freaking silver bullet. And you better gosh hope you hit it in the head, because if you miss, that thing's going to rip your friends apart. Or, better yet, lure it into a building and then blow up the building and drop it on it. That might be a little bit hard to do for a hunter group because, hey, you're a normal person. How are you going to get military-grade explosives?
I have my ways.
It's
It's all about connections.
But, yes. this is pretty much. I think this is a pretty decent ending point, though. I have to run for a second, and we're going to be having game in about a half hour. But I hope this has helped people a little bit with understanding the world and kind of just getting an overall view of how things are. Next week, we'll probably be going into vampires, deep dive into vampires, their culture, their ways, their enemies.
We'll see about that.
We'll see. We'll try.
Well, it's thankfully not too long, Toshime, so you don't have to, it's not like it's going to be a huge amount to go through.
Nah, and you should know most of this, Toshime. I think.
It doesn't hurt to have a refresher. But thank you all for joining us for the first episode of Kur Tales. I will be back in a little bit with some more streaming. Check out our website, zgfgaming.com. We've got links for our Discord, Telegram, Twitter, Patreon, all those things there on the website as well as down in the description below. Thank you to my patrons, donators, and subscribers. It is because of your support that I'm able to continue bringing these streams to you all. I really cannot do this without your guys' help and support. Consider becoming a patron over at patreon.com/zgfgaming. It helps us to keep bringing these streams to you guys. We cannot do this without your support. But for now, don't forget to share the stream around, and I bid you all the most fondest adieu. Kurt?
Duke.